Layer masks are a key feature of Photoshop that allow us to non-destructively hide and show selective portions of our image. We can see that this document has 6 different images, each on its own layer. So we have a birds layer, we have the skyline of Chicago, we have some clouds, an iceberg, some smoke, and a porthole. Now, the first thing that I want to do is I want to mask the iceberg so that it only appears within the porthole. And to do this, I'm going to first create a selection. I think the easiest way to do this would be to go to the View menu and then Show Our Rulers. Then from the ruler area, we can drag out guides. So I'm going to drag out the first guide at the top of the porthole, and then I'll use the ruler on the left side to drag out a guide to the left side of it. I want to drag these guides to this inner area here so that when I select the marquee tool, I can start at the cross point of those two guides. And as I drag into the image area, it's going to create a selection that's going to match that circle. Excellent. Now it's okay if it's not completely perfect. And if you need to redraw it, you can just click in the image area and then drag it out again. All right, now in order to add the mask to the iceberg layer, I will target that layer and also make it visible in the layers panel. And then from the layers menu, I can choose to either add a mask that reveals all, reveals selection, or hides the selection, or even from transparency. Well, since we've already made the selection, let's go ahead and select that. So now we can see in the layers panel that Photoshop has added a layer mask. Where the mask is black, Photoshop is hiding the contents of that layer, and where the mask is white, we can see the contents of that layer in the image area. If we want to view the mask, we can hold down the Option key on the Mac or the Alt key on Windows and click in the mask. To see the image again, we can click on the eye icon. Now, if we wanted to soften the edges non-destructively, we can use the Properties panel and add a feather. I'll go ahead and Option click or Alt click on the mask again so that we can see it. And then as we add the feather, we can see that it blurs that edge, making it softer. Now let's go ahead and toggle the visibility of the layer on again so that we can actually see the results of the feather. And I'm just going to bring it down a little bit, maybe somewhere right around 10 or 12. Next, I want to add these clouds, but I want the clouds to only appear where the iceberg appears. And in order to do that, we can create what's called a clipping mask. So I'll target the clouds layer, and then under the layer menu, I'll choose Create Clipping Mask. This will tell Photoshop to only display the clouds where there's content visible on the layer below. So the base layer for the clipping mask is the iceberg, and I know that because it's got the underline. And the clouds are clipped to it, and I know that because it's got this downward pointing triangle in the layers panel. So this makes it very easy for me to switch to, say, the Move tool by tapping the V key. And now I can reposition the clouds without having to worry about this mask because they'll only be visible wherever the contents of that layer is below. But I don't want this harsh line here, so I do need to add a layer mask to the clouds layer. I can choose the layer menu again and then layer mask, and I can choose to reveal all or hide all, or I can just click at the bottom of the layers panel on the mask icon to add a mask that shows everything or reveals everything. Now, in order to paint in this mask, I'm going to tap the B key to select the paintbrush, and I'm going to right click, or on the Mac, you can control click to reset that tool. Then I'll use the right bracket key in order to get a larger brush. And I want to make sure that I'm painting with black in the mask so that I hide the contents. And I'll just tap the X key to exchange my foreground and background color. So now that I'm painting with black with a very large soft edge brush, as I paint in this area, we can hide the bottom of the clouds layer, getting rid of that harsh line so that the clouds blend in with the layer below a little bit better. Now, if I want to reposition the clouds, I can simply select the Move tool and reposition them. But if I want to reposition the mask, even if I have the mask targeted, both the mask and the clouds are going to move together because they're linked. If I ever want to move one independent of the other, I need to unlink them in the Layers panel. Now, if I've got the mask targeted, and you do that by just clicking on it, I can actually reposition the mask in the image area. Or if I want to reposition the clouds without repositioning the masks, I'll target them in the layer and then move them around independently of the mask. Excellent. When I'm finished, I'll go ahead and relink those. Now I want to add the skyline, so I'm going to target the Chicago layer and make it visible. And in order to quickly select it, I'll use the Select menu and choose Subject. Photoshop does a good job of selecting just the buildings. So this time when I want to add my layer mask, I'll do so from the bottom of the layers panel again. And Photoshop is smart enough to know that if you have a selection, it's going to create the mask based on that selection. Now, I'm going to want to modify that. So with the layer mask targeted, I'll return to my brush tool by tapping the B key, use the left bracket to get a little bit smaller of a brush, and then just paint out the hard edge at the left side and along the bottom, and then also on that right-hand side. Now, I've been painting with black at 100%, but if I tap the 5 key, that's going to change the opacity of the brush to 50%. I'll get a little bit of a bigger brush using the right bracket key. And now I can simply click to paint and selectively hide a little bit more of that skyline. If I like the effect, but I just want to decrease the opacity overall, then I would move to the layers panel and decrease the opacity of that layer. And if I want it to blend in a little bit better with the background, I can change the blend mode from normal to multiply. Then I'll tap the V key to select the Move tool, and I'll reposition that on the right-hand side of the image. Now I'm going to add these two birds, so I'll target that layer and make it visible. This time, instead of using Select Subject, I'm going to switch to the Object Selection tool. By default, it's set to a rectangle, and all I need to do is drag a rectangle over the area that I want it to select the objects in. Then again, from the bottom of the layers panel, I'll click on the mask icon in order to add a mask, and Photoshop adds a mask based on that selection. If I want to reposition that, I'll just switch to the Move tool again by tapping the V key and then just reposition the birds in the image area. All right, let's go ahead and hide our guides. We can do that using the keyboard shortcut Command apostrophe on Mac or Control apostrophe on Windows, or you can use the View menu and just toggle off the extras here. I'm also going to zoom out using Command minus. That's going to make it a little bit easier when I add the smoke to the image. So I'll target that layer and make it visible. Now, it looks like it's being masked, but in fact, it's just being hidden by the layers that are above it. If I toggle off the visibility of those layers, we can see that indeed we see the entire smoke layer. So let's go ahead and toggle those back on. And then I want to add a layer mask, but this time, instead of adding a white mask that will reveal all of the smoke, I actually want to hide the smoke. So I'm going to hold down the Option key on Mac or the Alt key on Windows and click on the mask icon. Then I'll tap B to select my paintbrush, and I've got it set to 50% already, but it's painting with black. So I need to tap the X key. The X key will exchange my foreground and background colors so that now I can paint with white in the mask. And as I paint with white, it's going to reveal that smoke. So I'm just going to make a lot of small brush strokes here around the image to selectively show that smoke. Well, I like that effect, but I think that I'd like to see a little bit of that original porthole. If I hold down the Option key and click on the eye icon for it, it'll toggle off all of the other layers. I just want a little bit more of this texture brought back. So again, I'll hold down the Option key or the Alt key on Windows and toggle the visibility of all of the other layers by clicking on the eye icon again. Then I'll go to the iceberg layer and I'll lower the opacity of the iceberg layer until I can see a little bit more of the texture from the porthole below. Finally, I'll select that Chicago layer. I think the opacity at 70% is a little bit too much, so I'll just reduce that down to somewhere near 50%. So I think that one of the most difficult things when you're learning layer masks in Photoshop is just remembering to target the mask when you want to work on the mask and targeting the layer when you want to work on the layer. But if you remember that where the mask is white, you can see the information on the layer, and where the mask is black, the information is hidden, then you'll have no trouble at all masking in Photoshop.